Good morning. This is Bill Eshenbaugh speaking, president of Eshenbaugh Land Company. Welcome to our fourth webinar. We started one back in April when we found ourselves going to our homes and trying to work from there. So we came up with the one then, and we've repeated each month since with great success. Today at 9:59, we had 320 people signed up for our program today. So we're pleased that the numbers are growing, and we have a really good lineup for you today. We're just going to do a quick overview for me that the market, if you stood on the courthouse steps on January 1st of this year and made a forecast of what the year would look like, you'd probably been locked up as crazy as could be, because the world has been totally different. I think we're fortunate from today's perspective with the mostly single and single family rental perspective we're coming with. We're probably in a pretty good world compared to some of our friends in the hospitality and the retail businesses and so forth. By the way, we launched a little bit of a new look, so you'll see our new logo in the corners of these. On behalf of our team with Jack Taylor, Michael Strahan, Chris Bowers, and Ryan Sampson, and myself, we want to welcome you today. And if there's anything our team can do to help you with figuring things out as we move forward or your needs, we're glad to give us a call and see what we can do to shamelessly promote what we do as land brokers here this morning. Along the way, life has changed maybe forever. So we're looking at a lot of fundamental shifts. Last month, we looked at office and distribution as well, which tremendous story to tell on the distribution side. Today, we're back to returning to our basic of our housing world. Well, a mid-July view. I guess my view always stays the same. I'm trying to look from a horseback over the years of a good steed and see what's out on the horizon. And with that, I'm going to introduce you to Ryan Sampson, principal of our company, and Ryan will take it from here as the moderator this morning. So Ryan, take it away. Thank you.
Okay, so I guess I was on mute. So here we go.
That was good. I was reading your lips.
Good, welcome to everyone. Good morning, and excited to have you. We've got some of the most prolific builders in our market today on this panel, and so we're excited to get started. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping items. This is recorded, so if anyone would like a link after the fact, just shoot me an email. We can get that link to you for your team to see, or if you had any questions at all during this, there is a Q&A. So feel free to type in questions and we'll try and get those answered. As I said, excited with our panelists. We've got Mark Matheny, who's the division president for Tampa for Lennar Homes. Reed Ruck with Next Metro Communities, who's the senior managing director and new to the Tampa market. And then Pat Neal, the CEO of Neal Communities and former state senator. So with that, we'll get started with Mark. Mark, unmute yourself and we will get started with some questions. Thanks for joining us, Mark. Mark is one of the largest builders in the country. You have a unique knowledge of what is happening in the home building business around the nation. What trends are you seeing in building and what's going on in the Tampa market on what you're seeing?
Sure. So, as you know, Ryan, we talked a little bit earlier about our next gen product, which is something that we've focused on as a company around the country. That's a product that's really kind of a home within a home, allows for empty nesters, retirees, that sort of thing, to live in a home with some independence. That product has been a little more challenging here in the Tampa market, given most municipalities push for either zoning restrictions or additional impact fees. And with the affordability here in Tampa, it makes it a little bit more challenging. However, over the past couple of months, as we've been through this, we focus a little bit more on converting that type of space into either a designated home office, Zoom rooms, e-learning areas. Those types of things have become really in style. The challenge for us here is that costs are very important. Affordability is critical here in the Tampa market, and so all these things drive up the cost of a home. So really what we're seeing at the end of the day is that those buyers are, while they're coming in looking for some of those features, at the end of the day, they're opting for the higher square footage home versus the kind of catchy features.
Right. And with that next gen product, Lennar also has a number of other lines with WCI and your active adult product. What are the best selling segments today in the market, given with what's going on?
Sure. So really, in March, we had a few really scary weeks, very challenging from the activity standpoint. Because of that, and really what our selling position here in Tampa is, which is largely inventory. We had a great deal of inventory on the ground, starting to be where we've kind of wrap up our starts program for our November fiscal year end. And so we had a fair bit of risk. So we got pretty aggressive on pricing incentives. And we also got, from a company standpoint, both locally and nationally, got pretty aggressive with some of the virtual aspects. We went to some contact-free sales channels that were productive for us, got people interested, helped with our sales efforts, got them kind of back in the mix. But with that, really the first move up were the ones that got aggressive first. That's where we've continued to sell very well. April started to improve. May and June were two of the best months we've ever had in terms of activity, a great deal of demand. Starting to see more of those buyers from the Northeast and Midwest coming to our market, looking to get out of some of those bigger cities. And a lot of people just coming from apartments and mothers' homes and other places that might not be quite as ideal for them to be hunkered down in. So a lot of activity in first time move up. Our WCI luxury brand was a little bit slower to respond. We saw that that buyer really was responsive to a reason to come back out and shop and look at some of our inventory homes in particular. They needed incentives, they needed discounts, and once they saw that it was worth their while, they came back. So a little bit more discounting there. And then kind of the last to respond to us was the active adult, which has fared very well over the past 2 months for us. Our active adult is still fairly blue collar, affordable type active adult. We've got a couple of communities here in the Tampa market, one north, one south. Both have started to do pretty well these last few months when what would historically not really be a very good selling season for us. We are doing pretty well.
That's great. It's nice to hear some refreshing news compared to what we were hearing from the retailers last month. In terms of Hillsborough and Pasco counties, where you are, the most active builder in those markets, we've seen increased impact fees and rezonings being delayed and some additional governmental changes. We haven't seen landowners willing to discount their land prices to eat those impact fees, and I don't know if construction costs have come down at all. What are you doing, or how are you seeing that affect buying land going forward? And are you still actively looking to buy raw land?
So, good question. Yes, I'm waiting for you to bring us some deals where landowners are deciding it's time to discount their land, but we have not seen that yet either. To address the impact fee increases in particular in both Hillsborough and Pasco, we are looking more for affordability. The drive to buy is something that we're focused on. So for us, that's Manatee County, North Manatee, where we've kind of not been active with.
Watch out, Pat, he's coming.
And then even Hernando, those areas offer the opportunity for some affordability. So we think that ultimately there will be some benefit to the more people work at home and some of those, what we might call C locations. In terms of buying raw land, you've probably heard on some of our quarterly earnings call that as a company, we've looked to reduce the owned land, continue to increase control, but reduce owned. And so that's been a focus of ours. However, this is one of our biggest markets in the country, and we're certainly haven't abandoned raw land. We're looking to structure that right so that, we would pay a bit of a premium to be able to get that land in a position that's closer to home starts. But, nothing new and nothing unique to us, but still is a focus for us. But we certainly haven't abandoned raw land. We're still pretty aggressive now on the buying side.
That's great. I mean, interest rates are at an all-time low. yet 51 million Americans are out of work. I mean, credit is tightening from what we're hearing from all of our lenders. Are you seeing any issues getting, buyers financed or any appraisal issues coming up on any of your sales?
We're really fortunate to have a affiliated lender that is partnered with us on the financing side. We're not seeing a lot of challenges with that. We know locally that the folks that are out of work are probably not home buyers anyways. There's risk there, of course. We're concerned about it. We're concerned that will come to roost at some point. We are seeing issues on the appraisal side. Those places in particular that we did put some discounts and incentives on in end of March and into April, we're now seeing where we tried to push pricing, we're having a hard time getting it up. So that's a challenge for us. Appraisers do seem to be a little bit more conservative right now. So it's something we're dealing with for sure.
While your homes the last 10 months have been at all-time highs, what are some of the biggest obstacles Lennar is facing at the moment?
Trade partner availability, back a problem again. I think everybody slowed starts in March and into April, and now everybody's trying to make back up for it, whether that be public builders that are focused on, getting back to some sort of corporate number for year end. That's certainly part of our focus. So, our starts over the past few months are pretty aggressive, and so trade partner availability has been the challenge. Impact fees continue to be a concern for ours. And Tampa will always be a market that has a ceiling. Our buyers there's an affordability issue here in Tampa, and we'll always have that ceiling. So at some point, land, impact fees, direct costs, something we'll have to give. We're really well positioned on the trade partner side, cost of goods side. We have a lot of benefit from our buying power. We recognize that. We'll continue to take advantage of that. I think we're well positioned, but that will be a challenge.
Got it. Well, with that, Mark, I appreciate it, and we're going to turn over now to Reed. Reed, if you'd unmute. We wanted to welcome Reed with Next Metro. He woke up bright and early this morning in Arizona to join us. Reed is the Senior Managing Director of Next Metro, and Next Metro, I think, is new to Florida, but not new to us. We've been working with them and are excited to have closed a land deal with them last month, and look forward to them coming out of the ground on State Road 54. Reed, why don't you give a little background on Next Metro? You kind of have a very unique product that you develop, and one that we think will do exceptionally well here. Can you just share with our audience what you're building, the rental product, and how it differs from a traditional apartment?
Absolutely. So Next Metro really came out of the what we thought was going to be the rebound generation from the 08 foreclosure crisis, as well as honestly, similar to now, loss of economic impact across the entire U.S. What we found when we started building our product, which is, by the way, a rent and SFR product, is that they didn't show up. What we found was that we got a split demographic when we started building our product that really covered everything from what we consider a young suburban professional through, as similar to Mark was talking about, the empty nester retiree demographic. And over that, we started at version 1.0, and we're now on version, let's call it 8.0 of that product. And what that product really means to the market is we're sort of the missing middle. You've probably heard that term. We bridge that gap between what would be a traditional garden apartment product and a larger scale single family home. So we basically are building a smaller single family home, but it's housed within a fully rental community with your typical maintenance and staff requirements of a multifamily development, which includes 24/7 inside out maintenance, things like valet trash and the other amenities that would come along with a multifamily community. Within that structure, we started that in 2012 as people started trying to generate this type of product, and really put our first boots on the ground in 2014. And we're about 40 plus or minus projects in at this point, and have a pretty deep pipeline across the desert Southwest, and basically the totality of the Sun Belt states, actively working in obviously Central Florida, Tampa particularly, Dallas, Austin, Denver, and Phoenix, just to give you a breadth of the type of jurisdictions we work in.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's a single family rental, but it's not on a platted lot. You're buying, basically building a one-story apartment per se, that gives everyone a little bit of a backyard and feeling of a home, but not ownership. So we think it's going to do fabulous. How's your current portfolio doing in terms of both occupancy and then defaults? Are people paying in the rental space?
Yeah, absolutely right. I'll take that from the start. So really, from a traditional sense, we are a multifamily product. We fall into the category of, from an FHA perspective, as well as a lending perspective, of a multifamily product. So to your point, we do address everything from that type of metric. And in those metrics today, we're well over 95% collected, which is what the question is, I think you're asking me, of rents available. We're over 95, 97, I think we're 96, 97 last month on rent collected. Defaults we've seen, maybe 1% to 2%, which isn't, 1% is normal. That's, usual loss across rental product, Class A rental product. So I'd say that it is following what we would consider a normal trend, Ryan, for us in the market today. Do I think there's going to be some version of a declination over time with the loss of employment across the country? I think it'd be false for me to assume otherwise. But right now, the platform is extremely stable. And if anything, from a leasing standpoint, that volume has actually increased significantly over the last several months.
And with that, I mean, you were looking in Florida prior to COVID. How has COVID impacted your leasing, your acquisitions, development? Is it still going forward, or has it increased it or slowed down?
Absolutely. I actually would mirror many of the things that Mark said, that what we're seeing from a demographic trend as well as migration trends is that out of the Northeast and upper Midwest, as well as high density locations, we're seeing in-migrations into our product. And whether that means out of a core of a city to the suburbs, or it means from a different part of the country into the Sun Belt, into some areas that are more suburban in nature. So I think, to your question, that it's ultimately, we're very aggressive right now. Let's put it in those terms. From a leasing standpoint, like I said, we're actually on an upswing, a fairly significant upswing actually, which probably isn't a surprise to most of the people today, considering our product. And then from a future standpoint, our runway is fairly large, Ryan, in the sense that we don't have a lot of competitors today, but even when they come on, it's such a small percentage of the total market that I truly believe that, our horizon is still quite a ways out.
Great. A question from the audience for you, Reed. What's the typical size of your projects?
Typical size of projects is anywhere between 150 and 250 units.
And you're getting what 10, 11 units per acre density on average?
Plus or minus. Yeah, we'll run anywhere from high single digits up to 15 to use an acre.
Wonderful. So this is a question I always like to ask, because everyone on this panel is local, with the exception of you, Reed. So being that you're based in Denver, what are your thoughts on the Tampa Bay land opportunities from an outsider's perspective compared to the other markets you're looking in?
So I think we'll start with pros and cons, right? Tampa generally is a very affordable land market in relative terms, but it also, the rents obviously reflect that, home prices reflect that, right? So they are fairly equilibrated. One of the more unusual things we've seen in Tampa is that it's not a concentric growth market. So majority of the markets, actually all of them we work in, are what would be considered concentric growth markets. So in other words, you're working from core out to suburbs. The Tampa, particularly Hillsborough and somewhat in Pasco, there's some oddities where you get these large land gaps between a little bit higher density product and lower density product. And the county commissioners, as well as I think, the general populace, it's hard to tell if they really like that or they don't like it. And we see some differentials in how they view zoning. An example being the Hillsborough rural areas, where you've got fairly high density product, nice suburban developments, many of the master plans, for example, that Mark and the teams have worked on. And then all of a sudden you'll have a 2 to 3 mile gap between that product and where then what I'd call traditional suburban growth begins again. So it's creating a much larger MSA than you typically would have in our markets of the same population, if that makes any sense, Ryan.
Yeah, no, it makes total sense that, Keystone, Lutz area, and the urban service area is just adding more cars on the road driving to Pasco. So we see it every day.
Yep.
Financing is tightened up. I mean, you're financing your projects like a traditional apartment developer, it sounds like, and then I assume stabilizing them and then selling some of them off to the investment groups. Have you seen a tightening of financing for new construction, as well as how's it affecting your exit cap rates when you're looking to sell these things?
Yep. So I'll start out on construction lending. Construction lending, for anybody who's on that side of the business, went into a complete black hole for almost 2 months when the first COVID shutdown started happening in early March. We had 5 deals, for example, going through at some waypoints during the construction lending process in early March, and it just disappeared. One day you'd be talking directly to your lender, and the next day you couldn't even get called back, which wasn't unusual across the entire platform, basically, unless you're in the pension or life co world. And then about a month ago, it started coming back in. What we're seeing from a lending perspective is the underwriting is much tighter. They're projecting growth significantly less than what we've seen across all markets, and particularly Tampa, I can speak to. That if you would have projected, let's say, a 3 to 4% growth factor year over year for your underwriting, that's been dropped to a 0 to 1. So that's a significant impact in the multifamily world to drop your underwriting like that. So that would be where you're seeing the main effect in the lending world. The money is available, but it has tightened in perspective to how that underwriting works and what becomes ultimately viable from a lending standard. It's going to ultimately change your LTVs, so loan to value or loan to cost discussions because of that.
Got it. Well, we appreciate it, Reed, and look forward to getting more deals done with you in Tampa. Welcome. And now we'll turn it over to former State Senator Pat Neal, CEO of Neal Communities. Pat, how are you this morning?
Thanks for that big intro.
There you go. So, Pat, you're one of the largest home builders and land developers in Southwest Florida. How are home sales going for you, and what are you doing to drive them?
Ryan, I have to say we're having a happy life. We think our family sales are up about 60% over plan for May, June, and July. We think our empty nester and move down sales are still up, but not to the magnitude that our families are. And of course, we're experiencing a whole new world in sales. We're trying to learn new things to attract customers. Here would be a short list of things that we're doing, and I'd say doing successfully. Digital outreach. Certainly, we're now doing virtual sales. Yesterday, we had a virtual pop. That is the first communication with a person within the same day, and a contract in that day, completely virtual. We are changing our visual formats to 3D home projection. We certainly, on another scale, are working hard to keep our team safe so that we can produce the houses that we sell. And of course, our goal is to adapt to the new circumstances. We're going to have this temporary change until COVID is resolved, but we think there's going to be a permanent change in the way people buy homes. So in one way, it's exciting to adapt to the change. We're doing a lot of new things, and it's been fun for us and our team. And although we chose for conservation of capital reasons not to start homes to the extent that we should have in April and May. We're trying to catch up. I think we'll actually exceed plan for 2020.
That's great. And so you're selling homes virtually. People are buying homes sight unseen, closing without walking through them. Is that happening?
Well, I'm not. First, there's a demographic comment. Certainly the people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s are very comfortable with what we're doing. But after all, we're primarily a retirement builder, so there's some additional challenges. But we have a young sales manager. He's very able on the digital matters, and we are moving to digital to the extent that we can. And we don't think this is just a temporary change. We think we'll actually attract new people and reduce our cost of selling if we can go more virtual on a permanent basis.
That's great to hear, Pat. You're one of the most adaptable builders we've seen. I mean, last cycle, I remember you were doing multi-million-dollar homes and went down to 24-foot wide product. You talked about some of those changes that you're making on the sales side, but on what you're building today, are you going to do some rental like Reed's talking about with your portfolio, or what changes are you making on the builder side of adapt?
You know, the happy thing is I own the company and I don't have a headquarters in Phoenix or Atlanta. So I sometimes turn my ship and then I turn it back and I turn it there. If you came to work at Neil, Ryan, we might drive you crazy. But in 2009, we had our split and divide strategy, which was to take all of our big lots and split them in half. It worked really well. And the effect was our overall average cost of home went from $527,000 to $181,000. So we're changing some things, primarily initially in how we sell. But we think, again, there's going to be a change in the role of the home. We think the office of the future is not an office. We're looking at our wiring diagrams and patterns to go back to the smarter home. We started smarter homes too early. We rolled back a little bit. Now we're going back to smart homes. We think there's going to be an overall change in the way the house is used because of nesting. Our pool company is up 45% in retail sales because people are taking their Italian investment, their Italian vacation, they're making an investment in their home. So we think it'll change the product too. We're not quite in the multi-gen world as Mark is. After all, most of our sales are 2- and 3-person households, but we think in particular the role of what we call the testosterone den, the man's den, and the estrogen den will change, and we're doing a lot more convertible bedrooms to accommodate more living in the house 24/7, 365.
Got it. Thank you. As a former Florida senator, you're intimately familiar with how the government works and how it affects business. What are you seeing, both good and bad, being done by the government to affect the home building industry?
Of course. We're a red state. We're deeply libertarian in this state. You can see what you say, conflict in our national political discourse between the blue state governors and the red state governors. I'm rather proud of our red state governor for his courage. You know, Ryan, I'm also chairman of our state's Tax and Budget Policy Institute called Tax Watch. I think the biggest things that we'll see in 2021 have to do with state revenue. In April, our sales tax collections were down 21%. Our primary gas tax collections were down 31%. I think that will have fiscal impacts on our state that we're going to have some time recovering. And of course, there's going to be some long-term degradation of state income because of the tourism industry and the hospitality industry. So there's going to be a money problem. I do think our state will bounce back. We have a very resilient economy, and because of low interest rates, people are going to buy homes. It's my it's my hope that our home building industry lead the way out of the recession that I think is certainly due to come.
Yeah, let's go into interest rates. I mean, interest rates are at an all-time low. It's amazing. I keep refinancing and they just keep dropping another point every time I do it. How are you seeing low interest rates impact affordable housing? That's such a big issue, and Mark spoke about it, so I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Of course, it's a huge opportunity for us as home builders and for our industry and for the public relations of our industry. If people will take advantage of these low rates, they will help themselves with the amount of housing they can buy, and everyone on this call certainly knows the effect of that. I think we need to talk about that in the general public. I think we need to reach out with more affordable product. We in Sarasota County have to build affordable product for 15% of our starts, and we'll have new homes starting at about $250,000 in January. And we think the payments will be in the $1,100 range, or really cheaper than rent. So I'd like to talk about this as a great opportunity for our industry and for the people who need housing, and for hometown heroes, especially in these expensive markets where, for example, in Sarasota County, most people who work for Sarasota County live in Manatee County. So we all should tell that story and encourage people to buy while these interest rates are low.
Got it. On the land development side, what are you seeing for opportunities? Are there still land development opportunities or land acquisition opportunities down in your neck of the woods, or do you own it all? Got to come to you to buy the land.
First, I'd like to say we in Manatee and Sarasota County, we build in Manatee, Sarasota, Charlotte, Lee, and Collier. We're not having the craziness that you guys are having in Hillsborough County. We don't have any increase in impact fees. We don't have your county commission. We think everything's bright. I'd like everyone in this call to go see you and then come buy something from John Neal or Michael Neal and me in Manatee County. We are buying land as quick as we can find it. Our primary target is in South Sarasota County, where we have new property started. So I'm going to just say everything is good. The only problem, which we all are aware, is the length of the building and entitlement cycle in Florida. So as to Neil, our job is right now is putting together our 22 and 23 plan. We think we have plenty of land for our home building company, but our separate new business, which is called Neil Land and Neighborhoods, is trying to buy additional land to build for public builders.
Got it. Question from the audience. Senator Neal, what is your biggest worry in this market today?
Oh, goodness. All right, in one word, I'm not very worried right now. I'm feeling pretty happy. I think the word asset bubble sometimes gets into my brain. You might remember, Ryan, after 9/11, 2001, Chairman Greenspan lowered interest rates and put a lot of liquidity in our economy. And we ended up with an asset bubble in 2002 through 2006 because of the packaging of collateralized mortgage obligations. That turned out to be a serious financially caused recession. So in 2020 through 2024, I'd like to have an asset bubble without the banking deficiency. Short version, we live in a great state. People want to move here. Our taxes are low. Our economy is good. In all due respect, I'm not very worried.
Well, I know we're seeing a fair amount of folks moving down, and developers from out of state coming in trying to find land. And our hardest part is just trying to
bring them on.
And we're excited about Florida and hoping we don't have a hurricane, but it's been a good ride the last couple of months for sure after the March pause. So
Ryan, I might talk a little bit about getting over our skis with leverage. Of course, in the 2001-2005 period, the private builders had such access to capital that some of them got over their skis. In our case at Neal, we have a public bond rating. All of our debt is long-term, going out to 2011. All of our debt isn't very much as a percentage. So builders, of course, are going to be more, those who went through 2009, 2013 are going to be more cautious about their future and their management of leverage. So if you make me worry about something, Ryan, it would be making sure that our industry and those of us in the private side of the business don't overreact to the enthusiasm.
Great. Another question from the audience. Maybe we can open this up to Mark and Reed. What are some of the difficulties getting projects through planning and zoning with the county office being shut down and not doing face-to-face meetings? I mean, how is that affecting your day-to-day, feeding your pipeline?
Ryan, it's been way crazy for me. I have a public official in Sarasota County who I called 7 times before she would call me back. She didn't call me back. I ended up calling her boss, and we had to have an in-person meeting to answer a simple question. I'd say most private industry is reacting appropriately to the coronavirus. Sometimes it's very hard for me to communicate with public officials, and almost everything is virtual. Still in all, it's slowing us down greatly and lengthening our entitlement cycles.
Got it. David Lange just had a comment. He said, Pat, just knock on wood about the impact fees, as Sarasota and Manatee are both reevaluating over the next 12 months. So try and get those locked in before you get going.
1-800-political activity. David and I have worked together for years on helping public officials understand how we can create affordable housing. So thank you, David. You're on.
Bill, any questions with that? Any other questions for the panelists?
I think for each of our panelists, what question did we not ask you this morning that you'd like to speak on? I'll go with you first, Senator. You're never lost for a good answer for us. What did we not ask you today that is important to you?
I'll talk a little bit about the building industry. Remember that we comprise 1/6 of the overall economy, and we're important creators for the populations in which we live. In Sarasota, Manatee, many of our voters are from Ohio, so they don't have the long-term stake in the future of Florida that all of us have. So I would say the more that we can be involved in the public mind with the good things that we do for jobs, employment, taxation, affordable housing, and in this case, bringing the economy back, should be discussed. David spoke of impact fees. My own view is that the people in this call could do well for themselves and their industry, focusing on our public officials. What's happened in Hillsborough County is a bit over the top, Bill, and I don't know how it got that way. And I think if I was a builder in Hillsborough County, which I am not anymore, I would be working to change that commission so they represented the voters as a whole and express the importance of the home building industry.
Well, I think we have a great opportunity in about another 109 days or whatever it's left till November. I know Willie Nunn and some folks are very actively engaged in trying to support a couple of candidates for the county commission, because we got caught maybe blindsided a little bit in some circumstances 2 years ago. I know I told my guys on Wednesday morning after that 2018 election, get in your trucks and go another 30 minutes because there's no sense trying to rezone something in Hillsborough County right now. So that was
I-75, exit 229, turn left, stop at the Neal Place.
Yes, exactly. Hey, we appreciate your little plug for us to stop here first and come see you. So we
Okay.
shamelessly.
I tried to say that very carefully just for the people on your studio.
I was going to have our phone number just kind of superimposed across the screen as you made that comment, but we didn't quite pull that off technologically. So thank you. Mark, one of the things that we're seeing and hearing from virtually everybody is that they're making more sales than they ever dreamt possible back in April, having many cases now exceeded their 2020 projections that were made last year when things were pretty good. Does that lead us to concerns about where our future lots are coming from? Because it seems like there's been a slowdown in both rezonings, big land deals, maybe even some development activity. Where do we get our home sites to fill the demand for 2021, 2022?
Good question, Bill. I do think that that's going to be a challenge for us. Fortunately, we're in a pretty good position for both 21 and 22 here with our company in Tampa. I know not everybody has that luxury. We've got the ability for some growth here with our current pipeline. So we see some challenges after that. So we've got to figure out how we can get zonings done a little quicker, how we can get lots on the ground. That will be an issue for us. Completely agree.
Okay, thank you. And John, I know your team is doing a good job of developing lots for your consumption as well as others down there. But would you say the same is true through the Manatee, Sarasota, and down in the Charlotte counties, that there's a slowdown in land development that is going to create a little demand problem for 2021, 2022 down there?
Based on Metro Studies reports, I think there's lots in this region. I'm not up to date with exactly how it's gone. But as I said, we have a market that responds. I think we'll have a 2, 3, 4 month delay. It's definitely going to be a seller's market, and I think we'll have an upward trajectory in prices. But it's no different than any cycle where we're going up cycle. I think we've had the recession that we expected to reform the economy, and I think we'll go up cycle now as soon as we're through with the coronavirus. You saw in the morning's journal that the vaccines are being used in Europe and China, and I'm hopeful that by the first of the year we'll see a more normal world and the normal reaction that the market has to greater demand.
Ryan, do we have any more questions on our?
Yeah, so Reed, there's a couple questions for Reed. Reed, one, are you setting up your lots to meet planning requirements for a later date? I assume the answer is no, but I'll let you answer that.
Yes, we've chosen not to specifically, Ryan. We want to continue to stay underneath what would be considered a multifamily heading and FHA requirements for multifamily. So we do not, ultimately, I guess you could go back and condominiumize lots, but that we do, our product and our desire is not to do that.
And another question, Reed, was just, you offer full service apartment products, what's your operating expense ratio? I don't, if you don't feel comfortable, answering that, we totally get it. It seems most people are in the 50 to 60% range is what I had heard, but that was a question aimed at you.
Yeah, so on the operating side, Ryan, as you can imagine with our product type, it's significantly more expensive to operate candidly than garden apartments or a higher density, podium or high-rise product, which is my background. So I can tell you, while I can't answer that direct, I can tell you it's significantly more expensive than the last 25 years of my life prior to developing this specific product.
Wonderful. Mark, you taking your ship east? There's a good question. Going into Polk a little bit more?
We've got a couple of things going on in Polk. Yes. Our shift east, huh? Yes. we are looking at a few things in Polk.
Any insight on future senior housing or assisted living developments being impacted by Corona that you're aware of or seeing?
No, we have had some assisted living facility operators reach out to us recently, really wanting to make sure that they can keep affordability in line because they know that they're going to lose some usable square footage based on the distancing and that sort of thing. So they're trying to find those C locations as well. I don't know how strong it is. I don't know if that's a long-term trend, but have gotten some calls recently looking for land.
And lastly, we'll do one more and then we'll wrap it up. What impacts do you see for the election in November?
Yikes.
What was that?
I mostly work in state and local politics. I'm a delegate to the National Convention, but I'm going there to see the state senators and the members of the legislature. Our focus in Manatee is using the low rates to float bonds. Manatee has a AA rating. They should be able to float bonds in the 2.70 ratio range. We think that if the local governments can focus on infrastructure development and affordable housing and on the jobs that we're going to have to recreate in the economy, that if we at Neal are focusing ourselves on local governments in Manatee, Sarasota, and Lee counties, and that's been our emphasis. We have uniformly Republican governments. Mostly we have to work on our anti-growth Republicans seeing the benefits of the employment and taxation that we provide. I'd say there's a huge amount of uncertainty in the national election, and I think it will exhibit itself in the public's mind with deferred sales, at least in the late fall, like it usually happens.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we'll spend 45 minutes. We truly want to thank Senator Neal, Reed, Mark for your time this morning. All the participants that listened, thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to shoot us an email. And this will conclude our July webinar. I wish everyone has a wonderful Tuesday and the rest of a great week. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Ryan.
Take care.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Bill.